In 1984, mankind was introduced to one of the most efficient killers of the future. Yes, I'm talking about Terminators. Seeing Sarah Connor run for her life and do her best to outsmart a near-perfect, unkillable robot was definitely a treat to watch. Now, over the years, as the franchise has grown, we quickly learned that the nearly invincible machine that Sarah managed to outsmart was simply one of the earlier versions of Skynet's never-ending arsenal of killer robots. Obviously, that would chill anyone to their bones because defeating the so-called earlier version of the T-800 was not an easy feat. Knowing that there are more where that came from would definitely terrify anyone in Sarah's position. Well, in today's video, following the very popular saying, "old is gold," we at Marvelous Videos will be looking into the T-800 and its different variants and learning why, despite being the older models, these are the most powerful allies that any member of the Resistance would like. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. T-800 has a power cell which helps it function about 120 years. Starting off strong, we have the T-800 series. The first time we hear the usage of this term on screen is in Terminator Salvation. As Arnold Schwarzenegger plays the T-800 in this movie, this is the face that we are most accustomed to when it comes to this particular series of Terminators. We all know what a hard time Sarah faced when she had to survive against this Terminator. Other than being extremely powerful, almost invincible, and extremely good at combat and weapons, another thing that gave the T-800 a huge advantage over Sarah was its power cell. This particular type of Terminator is powered by nuclear energy. It has an energy cell of a nuclear power battery inside its triple-armored hyperalloy torso, right around where the human heart is. Each of these power cells is extremely strong. Using simply one of them, this killer death machine can follow you at full power for 24 hours a day for 1,095 days. You can run, you can hide, but you're not escaping this Terminator. To put it into perspective, think of any small city. Using this power cell, you can light up the city for an entire day. That's how much power this measly power cell can create. Now, that's when the power cell is acting normally. Like with our cell phone batteries, this power cell also has a power saver mode. It's known as the economy mode. If the power cell is dropped offline into this mode, then the cell would last even longer, as it would only use 40% of the nominal function. So what happens when you turn on this mode? Well, the T-800's optical system switches to infrared only. Its hydraulic pressure is lost as the pumps slow down. The compact energy sinks that the T-800 had are all collected, and the excess energy is stored for later use. If our dear Terminator doesn't have to go into combat while in this mode, then just by using his power cell like this, it would have a functional period of 120 years. Despite being the source of such huge amounts of power, this energy is not super well protected. While yes, it's shielded in a hardened subassembly inside that hyperalloy torso, one powerful shot from a .50 caliber can directly hit the power cell or the cable, disabling the unit for good. T-850's hydrogen fuel cell can explode anything. While in the original timeline, T-800 was the one causing chaos, in the Rise of the Machines timeline, it was T-850. Just like the T-800 used iridium power cells, the T-850 used hydrogen fuel cells. However, unlike the T-800, which has only one power cell, the T-850 has two. This twin hydrogen fuel basically gives each unit of the T-850 longer life with greater power. Each of these cells is covered in titanium carbon fiber alloy, except for its power points. These cells are about the size of a small book, and they also remain in the torso region of the T-850. These hydrogen fuel cells have easy access panels so that they can be easily removed or repaired. Now, why is it absolutely necessary to have easy access panels for the removal of these power cells? That's because if any of these cells get ruptured in battle, they become extremely unstable. These power cells are not just batteries for the Terminators. When they are unstable or damaged, they go quickly from being a battery to a mini hydrogen bomb. In the movie Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, when T-850 got a direct hit in the abdomen and ended up rupturing one of its power cells, it removed the power cell and threw it out the window while driving. When the cell hit the ground, it exploded, and the smoke cloud that came out was awfully familiar. Later, the T-850 took out its last ruptured cell and used it to destroy the TX by shoving the power cell down its mouth, destroying both of them together. Fun fact, while the hydrogen fuel cell we see in the movie is rather handy and compact, it was not the case in the novelization of the movie. It was actually far bigger in size. Either way, given that the hydrogen fuel cells basically keep the T-850 running, surely after you take both of them out or destroy both of them, the Terminator would stop, right? Well, not exactly. See, the T-850 can actually operate at a stored charge. That way, it would be able to keep doing its task at hand even after removing both of its power cells. However, how long the T-850 would work after removing the second power cell is completely dependent upon what work it needs to do after removing it. So technically, the T-850 can destroy everything around it with hydrogen bombs, not once, but twice, and then it can work for even longer if it feels like it didn't destroy just enough. T-888 has a more upgraded version of the endoskeleton. While the T-800 and T-850 have their perks, none of them got the biggest upgrade as the T-888 did. When it comes to the T-888, its entire endoskeleton was upgraded. When you compare the endoskeleton of the T-800 and the T-888, you will definitely notice the armor plating the latter has on its back. This rendered the T-888 more resistant to any type of precise sneak attack, which is something the T-800 cannot boast about. On top of that, the T-888 also has better pistons and new plate designs for arms and legs, which definitely adds to its durability. The T-888 also comes with blades on the inner sides of its thighs that it uses to decapitate humans. This model is also the one from this series of Terminators that has a wide range of sizes when it comes to torso, limbs, or head chassis. This definitely allows a lot of variety for the living tissue that would be added onto the endoskeleton, meaning no two T-888s would look alike. This definitely helps them be better infiltrators than the T-800. Skynet also focused on giving T-888 some cosmetic enhancements and changed up the design of the lower jaw and the head to make them look far more inconspicuous. Thanks to this, a bodybuilder or a schoolgirl, both can be portrayed by the T-888, whereas in the case of the T-800, the tall bodybuilder-esque physique due to the lack of variety in the endoskeleton was very evident. But that does not mean that the T-888 didn't take anything from the T-800. Like the T-800, this variant also has an endoskeleton forged from a hyperalloy with coltan as the main ingredient. This gives the machine incredible resistance to heat, as well as small arms fire and all forms of damage. The only things that can cause damage to this endoskeleton are depleted uranium shells, high explosive Rafis rounds, and thermite, with or without burning tar. While the first two can penetrate the endoskeleton completely and damage the internal workings and the power cell, the last one completely turns the endoskeleton into vapor. Despite all of these upgrades, this particular model is considerably light in comparison to the others. However, it is still far too heavy to remain afloat in water. Thank God for that, because I don't think there could be anything more horrifying than having a T-888 chase you down in water. Durability of T-800 can resist almost every attack. Given that this is one of the things Skynet kept constant in its newest T-8 series variant, there's no doubt that the T-800 has the best durability out of all the variants across the timeline. That's because this Terminator is extremely resistant to most attacks. While we may have different opinions on how much the T-800 can tolerate, there's no doubt that this particular model is extremely resilient. Conventional or unconventional, in any type of attack that the T-800 faces, the T-800 survives them with barely anything holding it back. But don't think that the T-800 does not have weaknesses. You can easily get rid of it with plasma weaponry or with a precise shot to disable it or decapitate it. But it is a daunting task to go up against the unstoppable T-800 and manage to land such a precise shot. I mean, remember when Kyle Reese shot at the Terminator and it did nothing to the machine? He even detonated the fuel truck the T-800 was in, and when the T-800 comes out of those vicious flames and falls flat on its face, you think that finally the Terminator is done for. But nope. The Terminator simply gets back up again and starts going after them. Even with the T-800's entire left arm obliterated, the machine still managed to reboot and continue going after Sarah to complete its mission. The only thing that stopped the T-800 in the movie was the hydraulic press that broke the machine and its central processor beyond repair. T-800 has one of the most powerful microprocessors ever built. When we're talking about the T-800, we have to mention its neural net processor CPU. This is a learning computer and is one of the most powerful microprocessors ever built. All the machines deployed by T-800 have the neural net CPU in them. Each of these processors is encased within shock dampers and then placed inside the unit that will go out to fight. With this CPU, Skynet is able to control each of its units directly if needed. Otherwise, each of these battle units learns as they go with a very basic pre-programmed knowledge base to go off of. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that each of these Terminators can easily adapt to the situation, blend in, reason with whatever problem it faces, and come up with tactical maneuvers from scratch. This processor is particularly important for the Infiltrator series of Terminators, as it allows them to adapt with the humans and enter the group unnoticed. When a particular unit is tasked with these types of commands, the unit goes into a read-only preset. This way, the machine is unable to adapt to anything beyond what is absolutely crucial for its mission. Miles Bennett Dyson, the director of special projects at Cyberdyne Systems Corporation, managed to get his hands on the broken pieces of a T-800 in 1984 and created the neural net processor via reverse engineering. In a way, this neural net processor acts like the soul of the machine. It's what drives the machine and makes it good at what it's supposed to do. Did you know that each of these processors has internal databases with detailed files on human physiology and anatomy? Along with that basic knowledge about the human body, each T-800's CPU can have other files on sniper training, tactical database, emergency medical training, etc. Overall, this CPU literally makes the robot a Terminator.
You'll find a way to destroy her.
Unlikely. I'm an obsolete design.
T-850 can't be self-terminated. The main focus of Terminators has to be their missions. They would do anything, quite literally, to ensure they complete their mission. So that begs the question, what happens when the Terminator knows that it needs to self-terminate to ensure the success of its mission? Suicide missions are not unheard of, and I'm sure Skynet too has had its fair share of those. So what happens when such a situation arises? Well, when it comes to T-850, it cannot self-terminate, even if the mission demands it. As it has built-in safety engineering with redundancy engineering, the T-850 cannot self-terminate by electrocuting itself. The only thing it can do is shut itself down completely and reboot from scratch. In Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, the T-850 did not pull out the hydrogen fuel cell from its chassis because it wanted to self-terminate. It knew that it had to complete its mission and take TX down. So it used the hydrogen fuel cell to get rid of the TX and complete its mission. It knew of the consequences and still did it anyway. T-800 can analyze everything. The T-800 has something known as a heads-up display, or HUD. This is a transparent display that would present data over a visual screen. The HUD used by the Terminators is known as the Thermovision. T-800's HUD has a tracking marker. This allows the machine to basically analyze anything it thinks is necessary for the completion of the mission. It can analyze pretty much anything from the amount of nicotine in the air, weather conditions, and body language to radar scans, targeting with precision headshots, and a lot more. Remember that scene where we get to see everything from the Terminator's perspective? All of that very sciencey looking data flows in and out of the screen while the Terminator looks ahead and chooses the decision that would grant it the most success. While it's an extremely badass scene, there's no logical reason as to why a Terminator would visually display the options that it has before making a decision. I mean, yes, I know it's for us, but from a Terminator perspective, it does not make sense. While the HUD gives us a good sneak peek inside the Terminator's head, and also lets us see John's lasting order to the T-800 about killing people when it faces the SWAT force, which is all great, the one thing about the HUD which is not so great is the way it distorts the audio. They can use any type of military weapon. When it comes to a T-800, they usually come equipped with a Westinghouse M25 phased plasma battle rifle with a 40-watt range or a General Dynamics RBS-80 plasma gun. But this doesn't mean that they can't use anything else. As the T-800 has the ability to learn and adapt, it takes to different military equipment with ease. .45 long-side automatic, AR-18 rifle, M79 grenade launcher, Uzi 9mm, as well as the M134 minigun are just a few examples of all the weapons that T-800 can use. Because of its ability to learn and adapt, the T-800 was able to take down the T-1000, even though the T-1000 is technically a superior model. T-850 can understand human emotions more than T-800. The T-850 and T-800 have many similarities. With their hyper-alloy chamber chassis, durability, resilience, and very similar living tissue face, there is no denying their common perks. However, unlike the T-800, the T-850 actually knows about basic psychology as well as human emotions and socio-ecological interactions. This allows the T-850 to understand and then eventually manipulate the humans better. That's why the T-850 is a better infiltrator than the T-800. You never know if the person you're speaking with is truly a person or a T-850, so you can only imagine the amount of precaution each resistance member had to take. T-888 has the ability to fool humans, can make you a slave. The T-888, however, is in a whole different league when it comes to infiltrations. The T-888 CPU and the T-800 CPU look extremely similar, but when it comes to functionality, they work in very different ways. Its CPU has read-write functions built within it, specifically for infiltration missions. This allows each of these units to learn and adapt accordingly from their previous experiences. While the previous models could be reprogrammed by the Resistance members, the later models could not be reprogrammed that easily. They had slimmer chips with phosphorus compounds, and whenever these chips were exposed to oxygen, they would ignite in flames. So you can't really reprogram a T-888. Like the T-850, the T-888 also has files on human behavior and psychology. This allows them to understand and even maintain interpersonal relationships for extended periods. For example, the T-888 who replaced Vic Chamberlain managed to fool his wife into thinking it was the real Vic, which is such a bone-chilling revelation. On top of that, each of these Terminators expanded their databases on human behavior by observing other humans who purposely collaborated with Skynet. These humans were known as the Greys. Charles Fisher is one of the Greys who managed to escape from the Resistance after they were all caught. This guy in particular taught all the T-888s how humans work, rather tick. T-800 shares a collective conscience. With Arnold Schwarzenegger playing the T-800 quite a few times, there's no doubt that these T-800 models are extremely resilient. They are the perfect ones to send in as ground troops. That's pretty much what Skynet does. There are several warehouses with massive steel doors where inert T-800s are stored. The warehouse is full of steel racks, and hundreds of T-800s hang from these racks. They're usually T-800s with living tissue covering, and they all look identical. So imagine a warehouse full of Arnold Schwarzeneggers. Each row has 10 of these Terminators, and each body hangs from its very own cryochamber. These cryochambers are known as hypermatrix. This cryochamber and the vacuum-sealed room ensure that the flesh of living tissue does not decay over time. This living tissue is what makes the T-800s so difficult to identify, and that's why they are so important to Skynet, especially when it wants to send these robots for infiltration. But what about wars, like I suggested? In that case, the T-800s that go out into the field are simply endoskeletons with no living tissue. They simply hang from the racks at the warehouse, and when they're needed, the mechanical arms at the center of this storage chamber pick out which battle units to send. Hence, all of the battle units deployed work in unison under the command of Skynet. This operating mode is known as the Hive, which creates a direct communication link between each battle unit and Skynet. The battle units are hooked into Skynet and work as a collective, hence sharing the collective mindset. A fun tidbit for you: if the battle unit is working independently, without Skynet's direct control, this operating mode is called Rogue. Despite looking like they're not connected with Skynet, these Terminators are programmed in such a way that they have to return and download information. T-888 have more additional backups. As I have previously discussed, the T-888's chip is quite important, especially since this model excels as an infiltrator. So to ensure that its best product never goes out in the middle of a mission, Skynet ensured that this model has backups. The T-888 actually has 2 backup CPUs along with its original one. All 3 of them have neural net architecture, allowing it to adapt. Now, you might be thinking, hey, what about a triple CPU port? That could reprogram the T-888. Well, you're not the only ones who feel that way. In the show Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, this aspect was never reflected upon. It was shown that removing the chip would always completely shut down the T-888. Now, it could be that this kind of 3-port CPU is possible in the case of T-888s. I mean, we did see that Cromartie's backup CPUs did not activate until the cranial CPU activated it. So it could be that if the cranial CPU is removed, the second CPU in line would take over. But if all the CPUs are connected in one line, as in a series connection, then yes, removing one CPU would definitely shut down the whole thing. To prevent this, the best way to go about it would be to connect all of them in parallel. This is how most computer systems with more than one CPU are connected now. Recently though, in a YouTube video released by the producer and effects supervisor, it was explained that the T-888 has 3 CPUs in its head. 2 are present in line over the right temple, and the third one is a little left to the crown of the head. So maybe the triple port would indeed work. Marvelous verdict. So there you have it, folks. From the iconic T-800 to the deceptive T-888, each incredible aspect of this franchise's titular machines left me amazed and captivated. What do you think is the coolest ability that we've mentioned? Let us know in the comments below. And until next time, take care. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Be safe. Thanks, everyone.